Good morning, everyone. My name is CEBDS for Sustainable Development. I welcome you to our Nature-Based Solutions event in Brazil. Today, we'll have the chance to delve deeper into our understanding in this concept of nature-based solutions, which is a key concept to face the many crises we are facing. According to the UN, are three simultaneous crises: the climate change, the loss of biodiversity and contamination, and also inequality, social inequality, which undermines our capacity to collectively face these crises. Today, we'll have the chance to know about practical solutions from the business side and from experts who know about these nature-based solutions, with a main role into putting mankind back into our role in nature to reduce until 2030 the reduction carbon neutrality for the environment. This issue of nature-based solutions was the focus of a CEBDS publication in 2017, where we published many practical business cases that we are going to get to know about more today. We are going to have the chance of hearing about them. We'll have a first introduction round, and afterwards we're going to have some time for a debate where the audience is going to be able to send us their questions. So I prompt you to get them ready whenever you can. I would like to thank, first of all, our sponsors who made this event possible, which is a joint effort from different chambers from the CEBDS, and you can see here who are the sponsors for each of these chambers, which are debating these nature-based solutions we are mentioning. And to introduce you to our speakers today, we'll have the participations of Marie, Samuel, Alessandra, Andre, and Patricia. I welcome them and I thank them for accepting our invitation. And I would like to just give you the floor, inviting Marie, the Subsecretariat of the Conservation of Biodiversity and Climate Change from Rio de Janeiro, so she can share her experience with us. Thank you very much, Juliana. Thank you. Congratulations for this initiative to be able to discuss these nature-based solutions. I will start my presentation giving you a little bit of context and talking a little bit of our experience in our state, so we can follow up that. I think it's important to highlight this, the importance of these nature-based solutions. We need to say that today we are already in a scenario where we are threatened by hydric insecurity in the public infrastructure. We have already lived the impact of climate change with the intensification of extreme events and the loss of biodiversity and the degradation of the environment in our landscapes, our ecosystems. And within that scenario, the solutions that are based in nature have been shown to work in order to face these challenges. And within this context, it addresses these challenges as well as it offers financial benefits. And we can think about different approaches for the different biomes and different environments, different types of areas, which are urban, beach, and cultivated areas too. I think these figures show the importance of these nature-based solutions to address the goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, the ODS. You will see in the base of the pyramid, the biosphere. This is the base to be able to get to the goals that are related to socioeconomic, that are fundamental for these solutions. And I think it's important to say that this is a term that has been used more and more in the last years. And this encompasses a series of other concepts that are being used to talk about solutions that guarantee the quality of life and the social and human development. These are a big umbrella for many other concepts. And I wanted to highlight the importance of this concept where we have here this progression in the restoration of ecosystems that can be multiplied to be able to reach the benefits that we want for society. And it's also important that we highlight that they have to do with the base of ecosystemic services, always wanted to protect biodiversity. It is not centered in nature. It needs to benefit biodiversity, and it's also a solution that comes where it is also cost efficient and can be planned in an integrated way with also infrastructure. And they don't exclude each other with traditional solutions. And when we think about these solutions for hydro safety, water safety, we need to integrate them with these traditional solutions.
E é importante também destacar diferentes
and it's important to understand which are the types of solutions that are based on nature. We have some that are to preserve ecosystems, and they have the least intervention from us, but there are also solutions that work with ecosystems that are managed, like good agricultural practices, good restoration of forests and preservation of the soil. And also we have urban solutions, like, for example, green rooftops and bioretention. And we are talking about all this universe and all these types of solutions. And when we talk about these concepts to address these challenges, if we talk about this practical side of the issue, when we talk about Rio de Janeiro, I will tell you how we have implemented this in public policies. I think the big first step is to recognize this concept within the planning of actions for water security. And many of these concepts, these components, have to do with environmental quality, involving several alternatives. It was a concern for the government, but it didn't have these alternatives. So if we want to be contemplated with these policies within the problem in an integrated way, we need to see that here in the state we have instances of legislations that are specific for this nature-based solutions concept, dealing specifically with this issue So it has been an advance
né?
within the management of water resources.
Em relação à agenda das mudanças
And pertaining to the agenda of climate change, the importance of these solutions when we deal with mitigation, adaptation, these are in the state policies
frente aos cenários e às
with
alternativas
the sector actions and alternatives of actions that are going to be included in the government strategies within these two axes. And in the sphere of planning, it's already been implemented and contemplated. And talking about the technical basis, it is important that we can address where we can adopt these strategies and where we can get this cost effectiveness. So we have mapped all the public expenditures pertaining to this area for restoration, preservation of forests, and water security.
Os investimentos do Estado e dos comitês de bacia nesses sítios. Pode passar, por favor.
In the sites.
Em relação a projetos
about projects and interventions,
ambientais, boa parte
we have this payments for ecosystemic services in rural areas where we have to work with the landowners, incentivizing them to have productive, sustainable productive practices in terms of projects, preservation and resources.
Também, né, de programas voltados para
here we talk about programs to preserve
né, que abrange a maior
water fountains with the CEBDS, which is the institution that takes care of these resources in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. And it's going to have almost 90 million reais in the next 15 years
uma iniciativa também bem relevante.
to take care of these initiatives that are quite relevant. And in terms of forest restoration, we have an initiative that is Florestas do Amanhã, which is going to implement financial resources that are going to contribute about 440 million and 70 million of investments for restoration. And we have the goal to restore 440,000 hectares, focusing on the most important areas pertaining to biodiversity and carbon capture and water security. Paying attention to the mangrove area, special attention to the mangrove area, which are very important to give resilience to these coastal areas, and they capture much more carbon than the forests. So this is a very strategic action to be taken. This, I'm going to get to the end of it. So here we have the divulgation of publishing of transparency of the portal. Whoever wants to access this link can see the information. And in the state, considering the importance of this issue and publishing of experiences and practices, we instituted this channel. So all these institutions that are named here, they register the initiatives there so we can have a public registry of what is happening in our state. And I wanted to tell you that we have tried to raise awareness with our YouTube channel, containing diverse webinars pertaining to these solutions and the things that we have done so far. And on October 31, we are going to hold an event, a hybrid event, about nature-based solutions focusing on sustainable cities and water treatment. So you can access it, and we have a link here on the top, at the top of the slide. it's open to every institution and public person.
De meio ambiente do estado, então do Brasil. Então a BEMA que está promovendo esse evento em parceria junto com.
So this event is going to be held with the Secretary of the Environment, and it's going to call all the states in Brazil. We have a working group for nature-based solutions that was created this year. So it's something that needs to be said.
Pode passar para fortalecer esse tema.
To strengthen this, the discussion of this issue. And this slide, I'm not going to talk about it now, but we can talk about it later during the debate. So the idea is to increase the scale, to diminish costs, and to include these concepts into integration with the traditional approaches.
Serem parte do planejamento e da proposição das alternativas.
To make them part of the proposal within the government investment from the cities and the state.
Financeiros, mas depois podemos falar um pouco mais sobre isso.
And we can talk about this a little bit later.
Novamente o convite, é sempre muito bom falar desse tema.
I wanted to thank you for this invitation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marie. So this presentation gives us a very concrete view of these nature-based solutions and these benefits that they bring, and the policies and strategies that can be acquired in terms of infrastructure. We need now to incentivize the economic regrowth, and we need to take advantage of this nature-based solutions to influence this new infrastructure, so we make it sustainable and cost-effective, considering the well-being of nature and also society. We are going to discuss this same concepts later, and I want to invite Samuel Barreto from to bring a case that is very important for pertaining to the Cantarera system, water system, showing how nature-based solutions can offer solutions to rebuild this resilience and to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Thank you, Juliana. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for this invitations, for promoting this very important debate in the global landscape. In this case of the invisible reservoir that we have done in the Cantarera system, which provides water for the city of São Paulo, that before the hydro crisis is now providing water for about 8 million people. Here's a very specific thing. With looking at water treatment, there is something that is very important to understand. Besides capture, treatment, and sale of this access to drinking water, is a think of we are thinking about not only about providing, but to taking care and protecting these water fountains, water sources. In 4,000 cities in the world and in Brazil have been in crisis, and 40% of these averages are showing high or medium level of degradation of these areas. So this is very important to take into account with all the changes combined with the risk of climate change. In Brazil, we were in the winter, we were living heat waves, and it was hotter than Rio de Janeiro, which is not usual. We needed to highlight these benefits, hydrological benefits, coming from investments in nature-based solutions, as Marie said before, and also to see about this hydric safety and the costs, the losses that we've seen in 2014 and 2015, identifying in which places we could have the biggest impact. And at the same time, we need to improve public policies of planning and management of, and to subsidize the use of financial resources to take care of the environment. So here I'm going to sit very quickly. There's a QR code that you are going to be able to see here. I will send it to you later, but these are the 5 different models that we have done as a way to complement the official data, where we could adjust these models based on 30 years of data, and we have found these scenarios with minimum intervention in 2% of the territory, about 4,000 hectares, 7% and 14%, which was the best relationship between cost and benefit. This minimum intervention is what we are doing now. The 7% was before the changes, and the best cost effectiveness we have found is the last one. So when we talk about this approach, in the case of water and nature, we need to look at the entire landscape, not only the surface. All this landscape has a very important function in the ecosystem. And if we are able to rebuild a part of these areas, bringing several benefits, not only for water resources, but also biodiversity and weather and climate, we need to do the things we learned in school, to compose a part of the cycle of water, making this water, instead of causing erosion and disasters, it can filter down, go back to the underground system. So now I need to see this quicker to disclose what we have found. In 30 years, we have also taken care not only about the averages, but in 1 year, we could see which is the behavior looking at the water in the system.
So in this upper part, what we can see where it's the fullest is the rain periods, and the smaller bar are the drought periods. And with the scenarios developed in the 5 reservoirs that are part of the Cantareira system, comparing with the baseline, what we observed is very interesting, because the solution based on natures, if we look at the bottom part of the graph, we can see the main peak, which is the Jaguari system, which is most part of the Cantareira system, around 80%. And in this drought period between June and August is where the answer is more prominent. We have a reduction of the amplitude between the peaks, both for droughts and for floods. The water can be absorbed in the rain period, and in the drought period, the water can come back. So this is what we've been able to capture. This peak that we can see is where we have more water in the system, and part of this water being able to go to the superficial water once more. This is another way of reading this process in the water balance, comparing with the baseline for the Jaguari Reservoir. What we can see in the upper part with the darker blue is rain. 0 here we have the soil. We can't see the red part here, which is the superficious drought. We can see really here in the picture, but This is the part we can see and manage, but notice that the biggest part of the water in the system is in the water, in the soil, percolators, subterraneous water. This is the higher concentration. And this period that is here from 2013 to 2015 is the biggest drought period in the state of São Paulo, especially in the bigger São Paulo area in the Cantareira system. And the smallest peak is when it almost collapsed, when it almost reached the limit for the stock. And we talked about that volume 1 and 2. Here comparing the baselines of one of the models we use, one of the water models that we use in SWOT. LB is baseline, and rivers, this is the model we see this best cost-benefit relationship. The red is almost unchanged in the baseline, and what we see with the model, the red is almost the same, but see the difference in the blue, which is the water that's in the system, in the soil, especially in the drought system periods. Not only in the drought period, but throughout the years where we have the most contribution looking at the water retained in the system, this water infiltrating. This is one of the results talking about we are very secure of this work because we worked over it, scrutinizing it over 3 years with all the people involved for TNC and Maryland University and people who work in the system, hydrologists, to trying to find blind spots. And we are very sure of this amount of water. And one of the important results here is this increment of water around 33%. I'd like to highlight it's not water on the surface, but in the system. And in the graph that I showed, the part of the water comes back, and the main answer, especially in the drought system, when we need it the most, is the very important response. When each drop counts, when we have the depression of the stock of water. This is one of the important results. I'd like to complement the process with the next, which is a economical analysis of the water crisis. The red line is the loss that actually happened. The blue dotted line is a non-crisis scenario, and the green line is the avoided scenario if we had the 14% of restored area, around 30,000 hectares. This does not answer everything. This is not the silver bullet, but 28% when we lost 1.6 billion is very significant, almost 450 million. But this implementation solution would be at tops 650 million, maybe building this water security offer when in this very important area in Brazil's GDP. This technical study is evidence as well as support to decision taking. We publicized this in 3 papers, going through peer reviews, opinions, to bring substance to it. And the first time in the state of São Paulo, the regulation agency incorporated the protection of the springs for having investment. This is very important. If you remember my first slide about the care, this is not only about volunteering, but this is done volunteer today in the investment in the springs. But if it's possible to approve this
tarifária também para fazer essa
idea
complementaridade
to
da agenda
use 1% of the tax collected to this green agenda. This brings some of the evidence of these important results for water security, and alongside the Secretariat for Environment and Logistics, we're working in tandem to bring this innovation of this such an important question to include nature-based solutions to
QR Code. Fica à disposição para vocês.
This is the QR code available to you, and I'm also available for questions.
Esses dados que nós utilizamos,
even though this data we use for 30 years real data from CEBDS, we cannot project the future, but this is a non-regret action. It will increase resilience and coverage of water security, and we cannot not do any measure we can. One third of the improvement against climate change comes from these nature-based solutions. I'd like to thank the opportunity for sharing this work, and I'm also available for the debate. Thank you. Thank you, Samuel. This information is very important for decision makers, for policies, and for businesses as well. And the numbers speaks for themselves. Cost effectiveness, when we look at the rationality and economics, it shows in a very evident manner how the cost of inaction is much larger and this investment is justified. We will later on go a little deeper in this. I'd invite now Alessandra Fajardo, she's Director of Partnership for the Food Value Chain at Bayer, to present the pro-carbon initiative, as I commented, for solutions, nature-based solutions for businesses that was launched in 2021. And since then, this initiative has also developed a lot. Alessandra will now tell us some of the results and learnings. Ale, you have the floor.
Bom dia para todos.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
A função aqui é contar pouco de uma evolução.
We're here to tell a bit of the evolution of a program that we had from I to Pro-Carbon, where we had this need
de mensurar e baseado em
to measure, based on science, how this transformation to a more sustainable agriculture would be. So we started with the Pro-Carbono program, where we have research partners, especially Embrapa, but several universities as well. We counted on partners for innovations and digitization, so we could bring part of these partners. We do social environmental analysis for these agricultures that participate in project, around 2,000 agricultures in Brazil. And we use the guys from AgroTools to make this analysis. We also counted on 70 independent consultants in Brazil that for 3 years they are doing this technical assistance based in conservational practices and sustainable practices. So these 70 consultants go to the field, and the agriculture decides which of these 70 they want to get the consultancy from. And these consultants go to the field and say, you have to improve this direct sowing, you have to improve coverage, this management has been doing wrong, to improve quality in general. So this project is around 18 states, and we also have, for this first round, some partners, Itaú, Mosaic, Burger, these companies, because we're thinking we need this agriculture to stay with us for 3 years. And these partners understood that this 2,000 agricultures had a more climate resilient position. Excuse me.
Desculpa, tem áudio entrou aqui. Eles eram resilientes climaticamente,
então eles more climate resilient, and so they offered a way for this agriculture to stay in the program for the 3 years as well. Next, please.
Então, quais eram os pilares
So,
desse
what
programa?
are the pillars of the program?
Talhão por
So we
3
have
anos, onde a gente
a piece of
fazia
land for 3 years where we had improved planting. We have direct planting in a high level in Brazil, around 80%. The American level is around 20 to 30%. So it is high. But how is it being done? So what's the improvement for us to improve the yield and to not revolve the soil so much? Also, coverage culture to be improved. Many times they don't want to do this because they think between one crop and the others, they already have
não é
this
suficiente, então investimos
revolution of the soil, so it's enough, and cultural rotation as well to bring this biodiversity and not to be focused on monocultures. So we have leveragers, we work with this, and so we have the need to look at the genetics and biotechnology and optimizing fertilizers and correctors and agricultural raw materials and use a digital platform. We have Climate Field View, which is our platform. All of 2000 are in the platform. What makes us be able to implement and really to have visibility where to apply when it's really needed and in the land that is really needed. So we are able to customize this to a max. And we also have the gain in result,
principalmente esse agricultor, a gente tem que ter uma
especially because this agriculture,
razão muito clara, né?
we
O
have to
agricultor
be
só vai
very
fazer essa
clear.
transformação
The agriculture will
numa agricultura
only
mais
do
sustentável se ela
this
continuar sendo
transformation to a more
rentável,
sustainable
né? Porque se
agriculture
ele
if it
não
remains
investir nisso,
profitable,
se isso
because they
diminuir a
already invested
produtividade
in
dele, ele
this.
não vai
If it
conseguir
decreases the
tá
production,
colocando
they
mais
will not be
investimento
able
nisso.
to
Então, a
invest even more.
rentabilidade tem que estar
So
associada a isso.
profitability has to be
A
associated.
gente teve alguns indicadores, como foi o
We
aumento
had
de
some
carbono no
indicators
solo,
as the increase of
aliado,
carbon in the soil,
produtividade em si. Então, todos esses
productivity
índices
itself.
a gente mediu. E aqui eu trouxe dois
We
slides
measured
para
all
mostrar
this.
pouco do
So I have two
resultado
slides here as
desse
well, bring some
programa.
of the
Próximo.
results of the program.
O primeiro
The
slide
first one
o manejo intensificado
is
de
about
4 anos. Então, o que a gente está
intensified
fazendo?
management for
Aqui,
years.
vocês podem ver para o primeiro item, que
We
é
can see in the
produtividade,
first
em
item, which is
gigajoules. Por quê?
productivity,
Porque o
which
que
is
foi
in
feito, tudo que
gigajoule,
ele usou. Então, tem agricultor que usou trigo, soja,
everything they
milho,
use.
teve agricultor que
Wheat,
incluiu soja,
soy,
teve
corn,
agricultor.
some of
Então,
them included
depende do
corn,
sistema, eu não
beans.
consigo, não
Depending
coloco
on the
somente
system, I am not
uma
able
cultura.
to
Então, eu
just have
trouxe
one
todas essas
culture. So I
produtividades
brought
de
all
gigajoule e
these
energia, e aí eu
productivities
fiz uma comparação
and
entre
compared
o sistema
between
tradicional
the
e como
traditional
foi para o
system
pró-carbono. Então, a
and
gente
with the
teve nesses 4
pro-carbono.
anos um aumento de
In these
21%
4 years,
em
we had an
produtividade
increase in
no sistema.
21% for
Lembrando aqui
productivity in the
que eu não
system.
estou pegando o pior deles, não. E
And
também
I'm
estou
not
pegando
just
aquele
taking the
cara que é
worst
muito, muito bom.
and
Isso
I'm not
aqui
taking that
a
guy who
média
is
dos
very,
que
very
já
good.
fazem
This
algo
is the average of
e
the
a
people who
média
already
a
do
mediana
something
do que a gente teve
and the
desses
median of what
agricultores
we had with
do
these
pró-carbono, tá?
agricultures
Então
with
não
the
tem nenhum
program.
extremo aqui de
So
cara
there's
que
no
saiu do nada
extreme being
para
included
cara
here,
que
the
já
guy
faz
who
muito.
came from nothing
Ele
or
está bem na
the guy
média
who
mesmo.
already does a lot. This is the
Número
average.
que aqui é interessante entrar
Another
é a
interesting number
entrada de
here
carbono no sistema, que é o que
is the
a
interest of
Marli
carbon in the
falou
system.
assim, do legado que a gente tem que deixar, né? Então, essa entrada de
My
carbono no
colleague
sistema,
already talked
ela foi
about the
16%
legacy we
maior
have to
no
leave.
nosso programa, tá?
It
O
has been
sequestro de carbono
16%
também, ele teve
higher in our program.
1.540 quilos a mais
Carbon
nesse
sequestration
período.
was
Então, o que
also
acontece?
1,540
Quando você
kilos
é
more
mais
in the program.
produtivo, você acaba
What
gerando
happens is when we
palhada.
increase
E com
production,
essa
we
palhada, você acaba
increase
essa biomassa
straws
sendo maior
and the
e você
biomass ends
consegue
up
trazer
being
benefícios aí para o
larger as
sistema.
well. So we have
Pronto.
benefits for the whole system. Next, please.
Então, aquele era o resultado de várias
That was the
culturas
result of
de
several
um
cultures
sistema
in
com
a
as
system
rotações ao longo do ano.
with the
Desses
rotations with
4
the
anos.
year,
Tiro
with the 4 years.
e passo só para soja. Isso aqui é um
When I go
resultado da soja.
strictly to soy, this is the soy result.
Vale lembrar para vocês, além do trabalho que a gente está baseado em
In addition
ciências,
to the work we're based in science with the Embrapa, we are also developing a calculator tropicalized with Embrapa.
isso porque eu vou mostrar esses
This
dados
is important because I will show this data, it takes into consideration.
não tem aí
First one,
uma bola, mas só para vocês verem a
the
média
circle
soja mundial,
the average
das
of the
emissões é de
soy in the world
3.460
is
quilos
around
equivalentes por
3,460
tonelada. Então,
carbon equivalent by
tem uma
ton.
soja com uma pegada menor,
So
tá? Então, a
we
soja
already
brasileira
have a soy, Brazilian soy already has
quando a gente utiliza
2,600
os
kilos, it's
dados
already
técnicos,
less footprint.
essa pegada
When we use the
vai para
BR-Look
1.462.
data, it goes to
Essa pegada,
1,462.
o BR-Look leva em considerações
BR-Look
dados
takes into consideration federal data, okay, general data.
A A calculadora da Embrapa,
When we have the Embrapa calculator that is being developed by the Embrapa Environmental, it shows local data, precise this reduction to 860 kilos. And when we bring all of this, we're talking about the intervention, when we use and bring this benefit of good practices, it's reduced 74%, going to 657 kilos. And I'd like to finish my speech here saying it is possible when we invest and when we have this benefit and bring the good practices and investing with the agricultural, it is possible to reduce not only carbon in the system, but to improve all of the biodiversity and bring this equation to a positive level. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Ale. Muito
Thank
interessante.
you, Ale. It's very interesting. These numbers are very eloquent. Also, this issue of the productivity that you talk about, I think the role of the companies alongside their value chains have the point of view of educating and transforming behaviors in the base of the productive chain.
Muito bem, agora dando sequência, gostaria de... Acho que a gente está com algum áudio aberto.
We have some
Vou pedir
audio open.
Mas dando sequência, eu convido agora o André Ferretti.
Going forward, I'd like to invite André Ferretti, Economics of Biodiversity Manager at Boticário Group. This is a very interesting case as well, which is meeting Guava, Viva Água, which will be presented by André with the learnings and the results achieved. André, you have the floor. Good morning. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations, CBDS, for the initiative and everyone who is contributing. I'm here to show a case for a program that was launched in 2019, and as we will be able to see, it shows that it counts on several partners to promote nature-based solutions in the river basin that is very important and relevant to complement the supply water system for the greater Curitiba, which is around 13 million inhabitants, an interconnected system formed by a group of dams. And this initiative is developed around one of these dams that is in the final phase of construction, but already has a water capture system at the spring.
There are many agents involved here, about 20 at the moment, which are focusing on this safety and to the adaptation to climate change. Joining these different forces with people in the public sector, the private sector, the society as a whole, working with the concepts of water safety and nature-based solutions, but also adaptation to climate change in a whole, and also taking this idea to companies that are working those regions and entrepreneurs that are working with agriculture, which are a very important factor for the economy. For example, in São José dos Pinheiros, near Curitiba city, which are the main providers of vegetables for the market in Curitiba, and 70% of this production is done around the Miringuava River, where there are around 800 families planting produce, which are then used within the city of Curitiba. And the idea of this movement is to act in this region, focusing on preserving nature with three main axes: preserving nature, mapping the rest of the native vegetation, and promoting mechanisms of payment for environmental services, with also working together with the City Hall of São José dos Pinhais and the agricultures who are working there, preserving the vegetation and stimulating this sustainable agricultural model that has been adopted for over more than 100 of these families that are small farmers working with governmental institutions, learning to plant this produce using mechanisms that are environmentally friendly, and also applying sustainable entrepreneurship, working with tourism, ecological tourism. There are some trails and paths to get to know nature and different types of agricultural productions of wine, grape, etc., trying to take advantage of this collaboration, working toward the sustainability of this river bank, thinking about this adaptation to climate change. And we have a philanthropic fund managing over 3 million reais available to support these initiatives in the 3 axes that have forest restoration, preservation of areas. They support activities, economic activities as the touristic trails, getting nature excursions, and also training and education. And in the next slide, we can see a QR code that opens to a full paper showing the studies that we have performed in the area with ProAdapta, cooperating with Germany and other partners, where we studied some of the river banks in the region of around Curitiba. And as Samuel showed in his studies of the invisible water source, we saw the water flow, the average, the minimum yearly and monthly rain averages, to study how do these rivers behave. And we took the 4 most important ones, which cover, we are 60% very well preserved, 60% covered with vegetation, and in Palmital have about 30-45% of foliage. And we have perceived that in dry periods, and we have had a very important one recently, we have noticed that in this drought periods, they reduce the flow between 6 and 11%. And in these riverbanks that have less foliage, half that, have seen their resources reduced in 52%. So this shows that where this foliage is preserved, the water is best preserved for the population. We don't have big lakes and rivers. We rely on these small rivers to create this integrated system of 5 dams. So with this QR code, if you have the interested, you can see a bigger study. But the important thing is to show you this basic piece of information that has been guiding our work to preserve the area here, which is in an intermediate position compared to the others. to see if we can take it to a 60% of foliage, which would be much more convenient for the preservation of the water resources. And it will also generate jobs, economic activities, as for example, tourism. And in this slide, we can see a little bit of the scenarios that have been proposed toward 2030. We are focusing on this area where we are looking to restore specifically 650 hectares with a partner company that has mapped the region, and we use these maps to identify the priority areas to preserve here. And we can pay for environmental services with money that comes from the fund that we have already created, composed of public and private funds. And we try to stimulate this sustainable agriculture. And we hope that by 2030 we can get to these goals that we have proposed. This is fundamental for drought periods, and this means that you have to provide water to 6,500 homes per year. And this way we would avoid the cost of treating all this water. And when it's the rain period, all this water overflows, and it's very expensive to treat that water that overflows, and those resources will be lost that would be better used by the farmers. Next slide. And here we see how big this movement is, with all these institutions that are contributing, that are integrated to this initiative. We have NGOs, all these agents joined in the same effort to preserve nature, focusing on preservation of the foliage, restoration, sustainable agriculture, and impact entrepreneurship. We have another QR code here with a link to the movement Viva Agua that has begun working in 2019. So you can learn more about it with this QR code. Thank you very much, Andre. We have seen many other aspects to see in the debate, but I want to highlight this initiative that allows the communities to build resiliency with their businesses through the implementation of nature-based solutions. And to wrap up this first part, I want to invite Patricia Dalos, and we want to invite her because she worked with the integration of this concept in her business strategy. Valley has been always investing in these types of projects with nature-based solutions, with different approaches, with carbon sequestration, biodiversity, and they have learned a lot that they can bring to the table. So I now hand the floor to Patricia so she can tell us what they have been able to develop from that experience. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to thank Elizabeth for the invitation and everybody here in this panel. It's very cool to see how these initiatives can be integrated. this path that can be taken to address climate change and the loss of biodiversity that we are seeing in the last years. The board is composed by 3 assets: the Technological Institute that studies the biodiversity of the Amazon, also the Natural Reservation of Valley of 23,000 hectares of preserved areas, which compose a big block of 50,000 hectares, and the Valley Fund that is for investment and funding. When we talk about this integration of solutions of nature, we are focusing on 3 big pillars, 3 big avenues. That one has to do with carbon credits, impact carbon, from the perspective of auto integrity. Another front is agrotechnology. So for the long term, in relation regarding these solutions, biotechnology is a big leverage to help us close the gaps. And the discussions of biodiversity that we have already been talking about. So coming from the experiences that we have been having, I want to talk about our global agenda, our environmental agenda. For a while, we have been working with these concepts. We have been helping. I'm losing audio here, just a second. We have helped to protect 800,000 hectares. It's a huge area. The audio is breaking up. I'm sorry. We are protecting the Atlantic forest of Tabuleiro, which is being threatened by climate change. So we ended up launching a new goal to recover and protect. Audio is breaking up. So to increase the partnerships with startups of agricultures. So we have been working with the permanence of maintaining this carbon stock in those areas, and we been working supporting preservation units and also looking to projects. The audio is breaking up. So we operated with 8,400 hectares, funding agroforest with just a second. I'm going to wait for the signal to become stable. And we work with other partners, and we have received 300 million from this funds. We have Fomented Caporan and a wide range of startups that are working on implementing agroflorestal systems. With 7 preservation. We are having problems with her signal, so it's not possible to render a proper translation. I'm going to wait for this signal to stabilize. I think we have lost her signal from Patricio. Can you hear us, Patricio? I hear you. I'm going to maybe shut down my video. My internet is not working well. Can you hear us? If you can retake it, you were talking about your partnership with INEA. Okay, let's go. So with this protection fort with 400,000 hectares, we have 7 units for preservation. One of them is INEA. Helping the preservation area with their activities. And we have other units. And from our experience, protecting and preserving forests, we took a decision as a company to create a specific company with different other private initiatives with the goal of preserving 4 million hectares now. So we've learned a lot from this, and the company ended up getting into this area of restoration. And another initiative, it's breaking up again. We were thinking about different projects that we could support. There is one in the state of Pará, and we have done our first carbon credit purchase through that project. And that took us to see other initiatives.
Talking about forests is talking about facing climate change. And this agenda is connected with the Vale goal of reduction for liquid scope 3 emissions until 2030 and the goal for 2050 as well, but also supporting another company goal, which is the social ambition goal, which is supporting removing people from extreme poverty. The impact carbon logic, which is thinking about the social environmental gains with this agroforest systems implementation, brought us to partner with ICMBio and other fronts as well. The structuring of 7 production chains in 7 conservation units in the Amazon. And another front is the development of a restoring methodology for ecology in 2 areas in Brazil, one of which in the Amazon and another in Minas Gerais, close to the Vale do Jequitinhonha. And also a very important front is, I'm sorry, the audio is breaking up. We're having technical difficulties with the audio from the speaker. these initiatives as a whole we're having technical difficulties with the audio from the speaker. So I apologize for the connection problems and I close my speech here. Thank you, Patricia. You brought very notorious examples on how much this integrated perspective also brings innovation aspects. Talking about this international debate as Climate Week is, this is the main contribution Brazil as a nation brings to the international negotiation. The urgency of us having this integrated perspective and thinking about the innovation in environmental and social characters as well, and opening the debate in this final step, you brought several learnings and how much this reflected on the business itself and brought SPN for the center of the strategy. I'd like to hear from you from this experience. What are the challenges to be overcome when we enter this path of implementation of nature-based solutions? There are a few obstacles as well that still need to be overcome, and which ones would you highlight? There are many obstacles. There are several, and I'd like to start from the huge absence of businesses and solutions for us to overcome these challenges. And we've been launching every year agroforest challenges, forest and climate challenges, trying to map these solutions that are already existing in Brazil and even outside of Brazil, and bringing these solutions to this acceleration process and investment process. Tecaponumb was born in 2020, and today there are startups with a lot of investments. This year, for example, we have another array of startups that we are accelerating for as Hajix and etc. We have the Forest and Climate Challenge with some initiatives, with a lot of innovation going on. I think we lack investment from Brazil in these solutions, and we need to strengthen these solutions. We need to foster these solutions. It's not money lacking, but good solutions for us to be able to advance. When we look at the long term, these are the technologies that will help us to face these issues. But today, we still work protecting and planting forests is the way for us to be able to, in the short and medium term, to be able to balance these challenges that we have. I think the main challenge is the absence solutions in the necessary scale to be able to face these challenges. So the work we do here is very important because it's not only to have money to invest, but how you foster the biodiversity and the ecosystem of bioeconomy in Brazil. We won't be able to advance without this. So we support the Jornada Amazônica, which is talents and startups. We support accelerators such as AMAIS. We are alongside several initiatives and parallel agendas. You were with me in the launch of Floresta Viva, which is a partnership of BNDES and other companies. In addition to this focus, which is to have this 500,000 hectares of forests, protecting and keeping it standing, but how do we look to the other initiatives and strengthen them? in a point of view of structuring this ecosystem to be able to advance. I think that's the way. Very good, Patricia. As the CBDS, we work with engagement and commitments with for the role they have on unraveling these transformations and investments. And from these commitments for the ESG at Valley, for example, that brought the protection and restoring 500,000 hectares of forest goal, and how much this unraveled the strengthening of this ecosystem of standing forest ecosystem. And this catalytic capital and patience is key for us to be able to have this ripe fruit to reach the scale that you set as a challenge here as well, for this money to flow to the front of an economy that's still based on degradation, for an economy that conserves, protects, and restores. And I'd like to also invite Marie to talk about the scaling challenge that you also brought in your speech, Maria, from the point of view of technologies and regulation instruments based in the state of Rio de Janeiro experience. What are the ways you point for us to reach the scale of implementation in nature-based solutions? Answering this question, I'd like to highlight, as I presented, we have a positive scenario for the availability of resource through the Mata Atlântica Fund, but we have to design institutional and operational arrangements designed so we can implement in larger scale. I'd like to talk about the biggest challenges that are related to mobilizing areas for restoring. It demands us that we are able to generate this system for the restoration, the training of agents, and this market of extensionists is very important because we have to mobilize areas and also give the assistance and the follow-up for this restoring and decreasing costs. So we have different models where we hire companies, forest engineering, and the perspective of having models where the owner is also a restoring agent, and observing this issue of the profile of the small properties. We have a land pattern that is a little different than the other states in Brazil, but some states here in the southeast have a high concentration of small properties, and how we're going to be able to restore these areas, but managing and following up with this multiple properties is very complex. So we have different arrangements to have this restoring happening, and the reduction of the cost is also important, focusing on the highest favorability areas, morphological, climate, and fragment proximity, and thinking about the connectivity and maintenance of minimum levels of forest coverage levels in this fragment to be viable. And the maintenance of these water systems is also based on the viability of the fragment. So we also do this landscape analysis and biodiversity. This also has to be taken into consideration. And the cost for transaction of these projects is also high, so we have to think of models that allow us to decrease the transaction costs. And we've been working on widening this model of payment for environmental services, where maybe the property owner themselves can restore, in training, technical assistance to stimulate this type of professional or demand for this type of service, so we can really advance. These are some of the important points within this agenda, also the agenda of restoring not only ecological restoration, when we talk about the widening of production systems such as cattle and forests. We have a huge potential thinking about the state of Rio de Janeiro, but it's also the reality in other states. Here we have 50% of our territory is just pastures and many times not management. So we have the economical gain and also environmental if it's a well-managed pastures or the inclusion of native vegetation. We also have a huge gain in landscape point of view and scaling as well. Excellent. Thank you, Maria. I'd also invite André to comment on the opportunity for businesses so we can multiply these examples of companies investing in nature-based solutions. What are the benefits you would highlight, André? Nature-based solutions are actually complementary to many initiatives that society as a whole already develops, and they bring a lot of opportunity for business and income generation, as we have seen in the movements where rural producers are acting from sustainable production of food, but or nature tourism or rural tourism and other forms of generating business that at the same time they can generate jobs and income. They can improve the conditions of the environment where they are located. So what we are seeing is the connection of actors through networks and movements such as Viva Agua. They're key for us to be able to share knowledge so one actor can support the other, for one strategy can benefit the other and actually inspire new actions and even the creation of new businesses. Many of these solutions we develop when a company or a business develops for a problem they face in their location, in their daily lives, could be the solution for many other people. It could be businesses examples. Here at Viva Agua, we have an example of a property that was using biological control from fungi and bacteria, controlling pests in the property. And from the interaction with the movement actors and other companies with SEBRAE, IDR, which is the Rural Development Institute that acts on state, this property started having this biofactory for pest control, and it ends up being a business that benefits not only them, but it turns into a business that was bigger than they had before and benefits the whole region from the moment you deal with the challenge that is pest control for agricultures, and you're also benefiting water, reducing biochemicals that were used, foster a more sustainable food production. Other initiatives other than the Viva Agua movement we have here in the metropolitan region of Curitiba and the region of the Guanabara Bay in Rio de Janeiro, and the Urban Bioconnection Alliance, which are several actors trying to spread content and support other initiatives, one supporting the other, forming partnerships to develop initiatives supporting nature-based solutions in our country. Very good, Andrea. Thank you very much. I would also like to invite the perspective of a sector that is based on nature, which is agribusiness, and how through the Pro Carbono initiative, Ale, you've been seeing gains in ecosystems services. What have you been doing to transform these practices in the rural sector? As I showed, we invested a lot in a program that would generate data so we can implement them. One of the things I reinforce, and I think it's important, is that we have to look at it as a whole, as an ecosystem. And today, we have another version of pro-carbonal commodities where I can have zero deforestation conversion and low carbon soy, and all these aspects that are so biodiverse. We are advancing where we have to have zero deforestation from the agriculture to join this step. And as I try to keep the bar, we have the cut in the pro-carbonal program. They have to be in compliance with the forest code and in compliance with several legislations as well. And we give awards for the best ones and bring in the people who need to be here. I have two important points. Every technology transfer in science and data transfer must be based in the adoption that it won't retrocede. Okay, this agriculture is good for the year, but they don't sustain it enough to be a transformation. What we try to do is for them to walk with their own legs later on. We need partners for that. Andrea talked about several partnerships in the projects he has. This is a key word, because if we don't have partnership in the chain as a whole, there will be isolated projects. Us as industry will invest, civil society will pressure, and government will try to do whatever they can to foster, but it will die because we need several partners and chain as a whole. The involvement and the need for everybody to engage is one of the premises. And so we can reward some way these agriculturers once it needs to be investment for this transformation as well. So we have to have these connections. I like the 3 F's that we also always talk in the COPs: food, forests, and finance. These 3 F's must go together. Otherwise, in the future, we won't be able to make this perennial for this to keep on going.
And thank you to the audience that have been participating with their comments. Thais Ferreira, Maria Gozinetti, and here is a question from Enrique Mansur that I wanted to send you to wrap up this debate, because our time is up, but it has to do with what the panelists were saying before. Objectively, how can we tell people about this nature-based solutions to bring more companies into it? Talking about networks, Andre talks about that too. I wanted to hear about the experience of TNC working with multi-stakeholder alliances. How can we bring more companies to these networks? Good morning to everyone hearing us right now. TNC has different experiences in coalitions, more for water, specifically cities for water, coalitions for water. That is very important because companies are part of this solution. The work that we are doing is very important. It's fundamental. In terms of water, I wanted to say something that I think is very important. In the last 10 years, the awareness about the risk of these companies that are listed in the stock market, putting 63% to more than 80%, it's of risk, and less than half have action plans to deal with these risks. And we need to understand that alone we cannot solve these problems. We need to work together in the public and the private sector. It's nice to talk about these issues. It's very difficult to promote these joint actions. And there's another space that is important beyond market actions, is to strengthen public sector actions, because those are the ones who manage most of the water. And there's going to be 1 trillion reals of investments for the next period of years, 10 years for this. And if we think these nature-based solutions are going to help us with this water security, water safety, and protection of the forests, and this is not just for São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, this is global. This mapping that we have done are based on nature-based solutions. People still don't know much about this. We need to bring this evidence, which is important. Talking about water, there is a water resilience coalition which showed the world what water stress was, and brought these opportunities for companies to engage in this movement. We have several movements here in Rio de Janeiro with CEBDS, with different companies and organizations in the public sector and committees. So there are many problems, but talking about the implementation of these systems in joint actions, these collective actions, instead of starting from scratch, we should see where these opportunities already are. Because sometimes these companies, they want to do their own actions, their initiatives. We see that they have these areas and these resources, but in order to integrate them into a collective action, we need to understand that they bring scale and they bring more impact. So, and in the long term, with this relationship with the private sector, it's important to talk about trust, so we can discuss long-term plans, long-term goals. Besides investment, we need to talk about strategies, talking about the environment and water resources. Thank you, Samuel. I apologize because I fell down for a short moment. And to wrap up this debate, I think we have seen very inspiring cases here. And to sum it up, I highlight that we have already reaped fruits from this these approaches, and we have evidence in order to increase the scale and to get funds to increase the speed and the pace of this advancement in order to face this crisis. And as a final message, I would like to say that there is urgency. We have a window of opportunity, especially here in Brazil, because it's many important international decisions are based on this and in what Brazil has to say, and we can lead by the example, and we can grow up in these cases, and we can empower this impact in these networks in order to collectively build this impact with enough speed, because we have this goal in 2030 to respond effectively to this crisis and to steer the wheel of this economy that now it's degrading to economy that restores and preserves. I hope these cases that we've seen today serve as an inspiration to launch these partnerships. And I thank our panelists one more time for being with us, and the audience who stayed here till the end. And in the name of CEBDS, I thank you very much, and I wish you a great day.